This is a tragic story. If this is true, and I have no reason to doubt that it's not, so let me be careful how I phrase that. But and I'm not saying that America's perfect, right? We all know that there's pockets of racism and bad stuff here in this country. But I do believe that America is not the place that she wants to describe it as. Listen to her here.
These are not little kinks, first of all. Racism, institutional racism, is in the DNA of this country. When you look at what has taken place, look at our Native Americans, the genocide of Native Americans. When you look at what is taking place as it relates to African Americans, the 250 years plus of enslaving African Americans, and then you look at the disparities now in our community in terms of health care, unemployment, the wealth gap, housing. You can't tell me that systemic racism does not exist. It's not just a little kink. Secondly, you have personal racism, which is hard to address, but I'll give you one little story that shows you why we need to understand that I don't think she really understands racism. I was walking from the House building on Capitol Hill to the Capitol, and a man, a white guy, stopped me and told me I could not get into the members' elevator. And, you know, we have pens, and I was going to vote. And he blocked me from getting into the elevator and told me I was not a member of Congress and it was for members only. I said, "Sir, I'm a member of Congress." And I showed him my pen, and he said, "Who's..."
Okay, so that's a horrible story. If, you know, again, we have no reason to doubt her. Horrible, horrible story. And by the way, it's not like I'm saying the world's perfect, but I am going to tell you this. A lot has been done to help all kinds of communities, including the African-American community in America. And I look at it and say, you know what? There are some good things that happened. I mean, whether or not you think Barack Obama was one of them, that's another story for another day, right? I did not like his policies. I think he was more divisive. And I think that he actually hurt the economy in ways that we're still trying to recover from. However, the guy got elected twice, right? And he is considered a Black American. Therefore, you really want to tell me America is that racist? I mean, she's a Congress member. You know, I'm sure that there's, like she points out, there's bad people everywhere. But I would say, on a whole, like, America's doing pretty well. America's actually doing significantly well. I was looking at some data that came out of Johns Hopkins University just the other day, and it was showing the distribution of who's who right at the school. And the population of Black and white students overall in the school was roughly the same. It might have been like 14% Black, 15% white, 21% Hispanic, and it was significantly an Asian population there as well. But anyway, I looked at that and said, well, that's interesting because that's not necessarily representative or equal to the population as a whole. And yet you have that many students that are African-American there at Johns Hopkins University. Why? Because a lot is being done to try and help these communities and to course correct now. But you got to ask yourself, why isn't it working more? Is it because America's a racist place, or is it because we have politicians that basically bank on using this division and trying to make people think that they're down, 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 and that they can never get ahead without their help? I want to show you this study I came across. This was actually published by PBS, and it's from the Urban Institute. And what it shows you is that the racial gap is actually much wider now than it was back in the 1960s. Now, why is that significant? By the way, this data is a little bit dated. You can see that this article is from a few years ago, and some of the data goes all the way back to 2013. But what I found fascinating is that if you go all the way back to like the 1890s and you look at all of this right through today, this is another study here. What you find is that the wealth gap, it's actually growing nowadays between whites and Blacks in America. Now, why would that be? Why would it be worse now than it was in the 1960s? This is a very interesting statistic for you. In fact, the wealth gap is so much bigger. If you look at it and you adjust for today's dollars, like let's just use inflation adjusted numbers here. I'm going to wonk out on you guys. Watch out, watch out. Basically, you look at the disparity and you see that back in like the 60s, the disparity was somewhere around $95,000, right? So Black family versus white family. The white family was ahead by some $95,000. Nowadays, again, we're using apples to apples dollars. a white family is ahead by some $500,000. So that actually supports the argument that Black America has been disenfranchised. But the question you then have to ask yourself is, what happened in the 1960s? It was Johnson, right? That was the introduction of welfare. That was the introduction of all these special programs. And in the interest of trying to help Black America, what happened? Policy members actually hurt Black America, socioeconomically speaking, because effectively, when you couldn't have a man in the house because of welfare, they destroyed what is so critical and sort of the foundation of any economic success, and that's marriage. I hate to sound like such a square, but it is. I mean, having two parents in a household, helping to take care and raise a child, helping to support one another in different ways. I mean, I'm not even suggesting that everybody has to work, but everybody plays a role in this. And having a family, getting along in life, these are hard things. When you have two people there, it makes a difference. And I think that has a big part or a big role in why you're seeing this disparity. So it's getting worse, but not from lack of trying. I mean, again, you get the same number of kids that are Black that are white enrolled at Johns Hopkins University. There is an effort. I mean, they've had to fight back against it, right, with affirmative action, and that got shot down by the Supreme Court. But there has been a definite effort by Ivy League institutions, all kinds of universities, to correct this somehow, some way. But if you're not actually addressing the root cause of the problem, I hate to sound like Kamala, but if you're not addressing the root cause of the problem, which really starts at home, in the community, with the family, if you destroy that through your economic policy that actually doesn't help people get ahead, but instead penalizes them when they actually start to earn a little bit of money, then you actually create that poverty trap. So while they may have had good intentions, you know what the Democrats did? They created a poverty trap, and now they've realized it works politically speaking, and so they're perfectly fine. They'll tell you they want to fix it, but they're not actually trying to fix it.